Hey, thanks for tuning into the Art of SBA Lending. I have Nick Roach on with us today. Nick is the president and chief lending officer at Stone Bank. Stone Bank has an SBA division, which is how I know them. And Nick started his banking career as a teller and worked his way up and became president of his bank before he turned 40 years old, which is super impressive. And the reason I wanted to have him on the podcast today. So stick around to find out a little bit more about Nick and his journey. Hey, Nick, thanks for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Ray. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I'm going to see you next week at the Flagel conference. And by the time this airs, probably next Thursday, that will already have happened. So maybe I should talk like it's already happened. So it was great to see you at the Flagel conference.
It was great to be there.
Great
Had a wonderful time already.
It was an amazing conference. So you are the president and chief lending officer of Stone Bank, bank
Yes.
out of Arkansas. How big is that bank, by the way?
We're about 550 million today. So still
Okay.
a nice sized community bank.
And you've actually grown it quite a bit the last few years, right?
We've grown it from $80 million to 550 million in the last 5 years. So
That's
it's
pretty steep.
It's been a
growth.
ride and a lot of fun. So
I was doing some research on you. You're over 40 now, right?
I am. Yes. I'm feeling you.
You've gotten every 40 under 40 award between like the Rockies and the Appalachians, like all over the middle of the country. People are like writing about you. So you actually started on the branch level and as a teller, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And worked your way. This is one of these stories. It's amazing. I mean, you worked your way up. Your dad doesn't own the bank, right? You're a self-made guy.
No, not a bit. My dad was a factory, worker, worked his way up to a managerial position, and I've watched him over the years. And as a guy who didn't have a college degree, he worked hard and he was successful. And so I try to model after him and my parents. And I started actually when I was 18 years old, as a teller and opening accounts and things of that nature. And stayed with the same bank all the way through college. Worked full time. Went to college full time. It was a great experience. I've been lucky to be surrounded by some really exceptional people as well. So
Forget about the exceptional people. I want to focus on you. You must have absolute street cred at the bank with your entire staff from top to bottom because you've been in most of their shoes. Does that help you in doing your job?
Absolutely. As far as the street cred, I don't know, but yeah, it absolutely does. When I can sit across the table from a customer service representative and talk to them about, why this customer, maybe wanted to pull this CD or whatever it might be, I've been there, I've done it, I did it for several years. And, I think that lends some street cred, as you said, maybe, hopefully.
So I want to understand when you're a teller and you're getting recognized as being talent, we'll call it, and you're moving up the ranks, like what are you doing in the branch level that caused you to be recognized and kind of pointed out and afforded that opportunity to keep moving up the ladder? Like what were you doing that made you so successful in those positions?
Ray, I've recently been thinking about that, but more from the context of why was I so lucky and how have I been so fortunate? I think it comes down to dedication and, working hard and being committed at the end of the day, to the vision, to the team, to whatever that goal is at that time. Just working real hard toward it, helping your teammates. We all succeed together or we all fail together. So I think that mentality is a big part of it too.
But where did that come from? Because, there's people that just go to work, they collect a paycheck and they come home and their priority is other things. But if you really want to have that dedication, I mean, I feel like it comes from within. So what was it in your life that made you want to even do that and go the extra mile and have that like sort of motivation and desire for more and to climb the ladder and to just keep advancing in your career? Like, where does that come from?
One, I think I picked a field that very much interested me. It interested me as a child, the world of finance, so to speak. But, watching my parents, they're both extremely hard workers. They always were. They did whatever they needed to do. And so I think that was just instilled in me as a child, so I would probably give them, credit for my determination and dedication, and never giving up on things. One of the questions, it's a lovely interview question, is, what's one word to describe yourself? And probably determined is the best one for me, because if somebody tells me they laugh at around here, if somebody tells me they can't do it, then I'm going to spend every ounce of my ability to try to make it happen. So
What does that path look like to get to president and chief lending officer? Were you a commercial lender for a period of years? Like,
I was.
what?
I've gone from being a teller, customer service rep. Did a little loan assistant work as well. And then I was fortunate enough to work for an institution that had a training program, and so I got into that. Sat in special assets, so I got to collect things for a living. Trust, all sorts of various interests within the bank. So I was exposed to all that. Credit, of course, went through 2.5 years of underwriting, credit,
Wow.
etc. Became a lender after that. Had the opportunity to work with a de novo bank before I joined Stone Bank, and that was an interesting experience. Learned a lot from that as well. How to grow something, how to grow it the right way.
So part of it is you literally did everything. And when you get to a certain level and you have that super strong foundation, it just kind of sets you up to be in a position to lead. And so when you joined Stone Bank, you didn't join as the president, right? You were, what was your position when you first started?
I joined as chief lending officer.
Okay. And you were eventually, you were rewarded with a second job, it sounds like. You're now the chief lending officer.
Yeah. A title, absolutely.
We'll say on the younger side, right? Like,
Sure.
and
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
mean, that must have gone to your head. You must have a massive ego going around as the president of a bank at your age. I mean, geez, come on.
Well, I sure hope not. I think both my parents would be pretty disappointed in me if that were the case. But there's a great saying, and I've thought about this. I actually heard it on a DJ from a DJ on a radio station. But humility is God's greatest gift. If you don't find it, it'll find you. I've always tried to keep that motto. I didn't make this happen. It's a team effort. It's there's a lot of people that work here that do a lot of wonderful things every day.
I mean, that has to be part of your success, because not everyone could stay that grounded. And I speak from experience, because I've had success and I had to create this podcast so I can be the star of my own show. So no, I'm just kidding. But we do have a mutual friend, Vinny, and
Absolutely.
he speaks very highly of you. And he has confirmed you check your ego at the door, or you have no ego. And he loves you, to be honest. And you guys have built a really strong relationship over the last few years. I want to hear the story, because Vinny kind of helped you start the SBA division a number of years ago. I want to hear that story about how you connected with Vinny. Nick, you're in Arkansas, right?
Yes, sir.
Connects with Vinny. I mean, that is just amazing.
So we had a vision. We were already in the government guaranteed lending space, and we'd done a few SBA loans, had our license, etc. Probably weren't experts at it. So we started looking how to grow it, how to do this better, how to have a more defined process around it. And we started using a LSP. And through the LSP, ultimately, I met Vinny, and I'm forever grateful for that. He and I just kind of hit it off. We're both very hardworking people, both kind of have a vision. I've learned so much from him, and I'm very fortunate to have been able to be around Vinny. So he's an incredible individual, as you know, and everybody that meets him knows Vinny.
Yeah. And everyone probably knows who Vinny is, who's listening to this. So we don't even have to use his last name. I mean,
it's just Vinny. You're right.
That says something. I mean, I aspire to be Vinny one day.
If I can segue for just a second, I know it's about me, but I'll talk about him for just a second. The thing about him that I so admire is not his work or his accomplishments. It's really how he views people as friends, brothers, sisters, etc. And he goes way beyond, work in people's lives, and inspires them and helps them and this and that. So that's while he's an amazing leader and accomplished in SBA, those are the things that I most admire about him.
No, that's true. There's less and less in-person meeting these days, but he's big
Yeah.
on it. And I think the first time I met him was when I was probably about 22, and I was working for a 504 interim lender. He might have been at Zion's at that time or something, but he would just come through the office and it would be like, there'd be this buzz in the office, like, oh, Vinny's
Yeah.
coming today.
He's here.
And he's not quiet either.
No, he's not.
And
We're
obviously,
bashful.
no, he's not. No, great guy though. I mean, and I've known him now for a number of years, and we served on the Flagle board together, and we see him at conferences and things like that all the time. So he kind of helped you guys grow the SBA division that you had started, and you guys are crushing it. I mean, where are you at today with SBA lending, and are you doing SBA and are you doing USDA as well?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Oh wow, how big's the department right now?
We've got several people, as you know, we're more of a remote shop in that world. So we've got people from Pennsylvania to Florida to Tennessee to all over, and it really has worked well. It's been that division has been the model for our bank for remote. They're all except for 3 people here in Little Rock. Everyone in our division is remote. So
were you remote before COVID?
Yes.
Division?
Yes, we have been since day one.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, because that was a shift that a lot of these banks had to make over a weekend.
Yeah.
And get up and running like remotely, and everyone was coming to the branch. But you guys were already set up like that. So that helps a lot.
It really did. I credit our IT department along with our SB division. They already had, Benny's big on meetings. There's no day that we don't talk just about at least once. We have, team, video, Zoom, whatever media you want to use, meetings all the time. And so, he's an awesome communicator, and I learned a lot from him on that as well.
When, March of last year was happening, and you're, president and chief lending officer of a bank, and you have a portfolio of loans, you have employees, and you have this like massive thing that's happening, and it's like uncertainty, and there's shutdowns, and and businesses are closing, your branches are closing. Like, what's going through your mind at that point during like late March with all this COVID stuff going down?
Yeah, it was definitely a scary time for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, the health and safety of everyone. All of a sudden, all these bad things are happening to people, and nobody really knows why. There's not a lot of information, and so it was definitely a scary time. It's a scary time for business, for work. We don't know how it's going to impact defaults or the government going forward, or how business is going to be transacted. It was a very scary time's the best thing I can tell you, for a lot of reasons. And so you're trying to be like a duck on a pond, so to speak. You're trying to be calm on top, but your feet are just paddling as fast as they can below the surface.
That's a really good analogy. And were you having like daily kind of emergency meetings with your like board or anything like that during the first couple of days?
Yeah,
really?
we absolutely were. I mean, we have a team, so to speak, and so we mobilized and try to figure out what are we going to do from a closure standpoint? What are we going to do from a health and safety standpoint? You've got people with childcare issues. You've got all sorts of myriad of life things, I'd call it, to deal with outside of just business. So trying to balance that to maintain the work-life balance and make sure people are healthy and safe and all that. So I hope we never have to do that again.
Yeah, that was crazy times, man. Did you get involved with PPP?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
I I may be maybe not the third round, but I enjoyed the first 2 rounds. And the reason I enjoyed it, I mean, we talked about the remote piece. So we had a bit of an advantage where our IT systems were already set up for it. We had to scramble a little bit for equipment, but all of our SB division was remote already. So there was no disruption in that piece at all. for us. So we picked it up and we ran with it. We also were different that we processed all of our apps and forgiveness manually and have all the versions. So we didn't use a portal or this or that. And I think that ended up helping us in the end. But there's definitely efficiencies with the portal.
As I'm talking to Nick, and it seems like a lot of your focus is on people, and I'm curious because I just think managing people is one of the most difficult things. Maybe it's just not my thing, but humans are such complex creatures.
They are.
And to manage them, I mean, like, can you describe your management style and how you lead? Like, I'm trying to understand what you do to get your employees to essentially do what you want them to do, but keep them happy and balance it all. And I don't know, man. It's tough. Have you figured that out yet?
Well, Lord, no. Every day presents a new challenge with different, different things. It's, as you know, I mean, the world is changing faster than it ever has. My philosophy, you asked it, is empowerment. I'm not a micromanager. Frankly, that's not the way I've been managed, and I've understood myself over the time that I don't thrive in those environments at all. So people who will give me, a task and let me run with it, those are the situations where I thrive. So I tend to emulate that with my folks, and the team members that we have. We give them a set of processes, procedures, and let them make the call. They're closer to the problem or the solution than I am. So why wouldn't I, listen to them and try to let them make the call?
No, I mean, I get that. And I guess I look back, I've been managed more than I've managed. So I look back at what has worked for me, but everyone's different. Do you find that certain people you have to kind of tweak your style with?
Yeah, you do. I mean, every person in every situation is different. For us, we manage 3 separate government guaranteed programs, plus a commercial bank, plus, trust, mortgage, etc. And like you said, the approach to a problem is never the same. You have to look at each set of circumstances, but really the biggest thing is just communication. Communicate your vision, communicate your culture, and as long as you protect your culture very, very closely, then everybody kind of figures out where they're going to be or how this is going to work for the most part.
But the remote work, particularly like in the SBA division, for example, is it not harder to manage when folks are spread around the country like that, which seems to be more and more the trend where everyone's going?
100%. It is more difficult. It's always better, in my opinion, to have the face-to-face. It would be much tougher if we didn't have tools like we're using today.
It'd be impossible. I mean, what are you going to do?
To us, it makes a difference when we schedule a call with anybody. We don't do conference calls anymore, where it's just telephone. Everybody has to be on Zoom or whatever, media it is. And everybody has to have their video on.
That helps a lot. It's hard enough to build relationships with your teammates across the country when you have Zoom, but without even the video component, it's just impossible. And then when we're doing what we're doing in the SBA world, as you know, like, tensions can get high during these deals because you're lending to business owners and it's like their livelihood, and we're financing some of the biggest transactions of their life. So there's a lot on the line. And so you can come to these moments of like collision potentially with your teammates if somebody miscommunicated something or whatever. So you have to have those relationships sound and make an effort to build. And I take it you probably, knowing you, like to get folks together every once in a while in person as well.
Absolutely. I think that's another piece of the puzzle. So, is one of the reasons I go to Flagle's to see, it's a wonderful conference, but it's also an opportunity to see team members and, talk and go to dinner and build those, interpersonal relationships as well as just work. And that's the other thing I'd say is we try to intertwine fun and, care about people outside of the walls of the bank, so to speak.
Yeah. And it's hard, to get folks together these days with everything going on.
Yeah, it is.
Who knows what tomorrow will bring. Do you have any kind of plan? Like what's next for Stone Bank?
Right now, just get better at what we do, really. Whether it's more efficient or a little more volume or this or that. We've built, we've grown very rapidly. So now we're going to focus on, doing things a little better. Whether that be, whether it's a little more growth or a little more profitable, or a little more focus on our folks and their work life, et cetera. I mean, we still have COVID hanging around, and so we still have to be a little bit careful about that and make sure we're doing things right.
Well, the SBA seems like it's just so much more in the spotlight now with everything that's happened the last 18 months. And so for you to have this, great SBA department, and before COVID, I mean, you're going to be ahead of some of the other banks that are saying, you know what, we are maybe pausing a little bit more on conventional, because of some of the uncertainty. And SBA is actually not as scary as I thought, because we maybe got involved with some PPP. And so there's probably going to be some, I would guess, more banks coming into the mix trying to utilize the SBA program, but it's not easy. Getting that program up and running, I mean, that is in-house, because especially if you're doing it in-house and you're staffing in a time where hiring someone who knows what they're doing is like almost impossible at this point. It's just such a tight job market. So you guys are pretty well positioned then to grow, because I think SBA lending will continue to pick up even with these kind of incentives expiring. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. I think there's going to be more challenges and there's going to be more opportunity. So it just kind of depends on how you navigate those waters. I think the challenges are going to come from, as you said, for instance, I had a conversation with a CEO of another, smaller community bank here in Arkansas, and they did some PPP loans, and the comment is, "Oh, well, this isn't that hard." And I said, "Well,
right.
this is not making a 7A loan or a 504 loan." So, and my comment's always been, if you're going to be in the business, be in the business. Develop a whole team around it, develop processes. Don't try to do one or two offs, because you're going to, likely you're not going to do it right. Your customer's not going to be happy about the timelines, et cetera. So that's kind of been my food for thought. It doesn't mean that someone can't start that way, but you really have to have a mindset and a dedication to it.
When we were speaking to, I won't name them because I don't know if they want to be named, but someone who was going to be on that panel with us at Flagel, who is pretty well connected in the SBA space, was like, what's keeping me up at night is that a couple bad actors, and maybe they just don't know any better, but they ruin it for everyone. Because if that happens and these banks get into it thinking this is like PPP, and then they just cut corners, they don't do it right. And then the SBA tends to maybe react and put some new procedures in place because of like what 3% of people are doing.
Sure.
And ruin it for the rest of us.
Yeah, I agree with that comment. I think it probably will happen as they're expanding the net of people being able to come into either bank charters themselves, or 7A lenders that weren't 7A lenders before, and don't take the time to truly understand what their risk is and things of that nature. So it very well could happen that way. Hopefully not. Hopefully they come to great conferences like Flagel or whatnot and figure out that this is not, support NAGLE, et cetera.
Yeah. And the other thing we were talking about was fintechs.
Exactly.
And buying a bank. I mean, fintech, once you get a fintech and you get some of this Silicon Valley money, and you can buy up a bank, and then you can just have an SBA division under the bank charter.
Yeah.
Nick, is there any announcements you want to say today? Are you selling your bank to a fintech?
No, we're not. No, we're not. I think fintechs are great. I think they need to work in conjunction with banks, and not compete with them. It's not worked well in the past when they've, because it's not the first time they've tried to jump into banking in general. I think this time there's more of a focus on, SBA lending, which is even more complicated. A lot of people don't understand what the real rules and regulations is, whether it's banking in general or SBA. So a lot of people that buy banks locally that I've talked to or whatnot, they're used to running their universe in whatever small business it is that they were successful at to be able to buy a bank or something like that. And they're just floored with the amount of regulations and things that we have to deal with.
I appreciate you coming on. I want to recap a couple things because there's a couple lessons in here that we really want to hammer home. Because Nick, you started at the bottom and now you're at the top and you're just hitting your stride. And you roll up your sleeves, you're dedicated to the craft, you have done every job in the bank, and you've become a great leader as a result. You're a humble guy. And if you're going to give one piece of advice to a leader leading a team who maybe is, newly a leader, what would you tell them?
I would probably say, take your viewpoint off the table and think about the viewpoint of your folks you're working with. What are they dealing with? Find out about them personally, all that fun stuff, and make decisions through those lenses. Because at the end of the day, they're the folks that are really getting it done day in and day out. And whatever you can do to support them, you will all succeed.
It's good advice. And in fact, for some folks who might be in that position, we're really good at their job. I'm thinking like a BDO becoming like a sales manager.
Sure.
So like a BDO could be a good BDO, but then being a sales manager is like a completely different craft. And when you go into that position, maybe you think you know everything, and maybe you think you know the right way to do it, but you literally, according to your advice, have to kind of forget what you know and now listen to your team, if I'm hearing this correctly, and almost advocating for the change that they think or listening to their ideas. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely. I mean, and the same approach shouldn't work for everyone. Personality style is very different. Just because you were wildly successful as a BDO doesn't mean that your way is necessarily the best way for everyone. So, you've got to take all things into consideration.
Yeah, because I would want to, if I did that, I would want to say, hey, I did X, Y, and Z and it worked for me. So you do that.
Yeah.
But that may not work for them.
It might not. I think the better way to think about it is, hey, I did X, Y, Z and it worked for me. Maybe you want to consider that. And if you do, I'll help you with it.
That's great, man. I'm really happy for you and all the success you've had. Do you have any final thoughts for us before I let you go on your get back to work over there?
And I'm just super excited to have seen you at Flagel.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Had a great time.
Do you remember? Hey, do you remember when Vinny?
Yeah.
Do you remember that
time? Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.